Hello everyone, Croeso pawb. I'm delighted to welcome you to the latest of our Adeiladu Bydoedd Building Worlds conversations hosted by GALWAD. My name is Sharish Kulkarni and I am a 51-year-old Indian Welsh man. I'm wearing a white short-sleeved shirt with a sort of small red flower design, and I have a distressed green background behind me. The first thing I'm going to do is to introduce Bridget, who's providing our BSL interpretation today. And of course, Bridget will be spotlighted throughout the session. So I've had the pleasure of hosting this series of conversations, but it's been brilliant to have some of them led by the amazing young creative talents behind the making of GALWAD, Wales's project for unboxed creativity in the UK. Now, for those of you that don't know, GALWAD is about telling a story that links 2022 with 2052, and which we hope will create a direct and inspiring connection with the future we might build. Now, I always say this, but I think that's important because the future isn't a faraway place. We're creating that future right here, right now. The future starts this second, this minute, this hour. And the future is built on the past. We build it every day, and it's clear that we need to start creating that future we want in a different way than perhaps what we're creating right now. And that's one of the reasons I'm so proud that this project is already helping build a different world by telling different stories by and with different people and showing how truly inclusive creativity can help us build a future that we all want to be part of. So as I said, it's been great to have some of those conversations led by our brilliant creatives, and I'm delighted to introduce you to one of those, Ciaran Fitzgerald, who is part of the GALWAD scriptwriting team, developing a whole set of intertwined storylines that will be told across TV, radio, digital media, site-specific installations and live performances across the last week of September. So Ciaran, welcome, and I wonder if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you, Sharish. I'm Ciaran. I'm an emerging disabled writer from Bodolbert in South Wales. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a white man in my mid-20s. I've got short brown hair and I'm wearing a black t-shirt, and behind me is a white wall with a picture frame on it. Yeah, I've been working with GALWAD over the last few months. I've just been really enjoying the process. Yes, and today to have the opportunity to interview Jack is amazing. So thank you for making this happen.
Well, it's our pleasure. So thanks, Ciaran. And as you say, we're delighted to welcome to the screenwriter and playwright, Jack Thorne. I mean, that's narrowing down your skills. But Jack, I wonder if you'd like to introduce yourself and say hello too.
Yes, hello. Thanks so much for having me. Yes, I am a tall, bald man wearing glasses and headphones. I've got a scraggly beard, a sweaty face, and I'm a white man. And I've got a red t-shirt on with food cycle written on it. And I am half Welsh. My dad is from Fishguard. And was in fact conceived in a field outside Fishguard in 1943 because his my grandparents my grandparents weren't allowed to sleep in the house. They were they were married, but it was a very serious Welsh family where that you if you are even if you're married, you're the man sleeps downstairs in the chair.
Well, having grown up near Fishguard myself, that actually rings true, to be honest. So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, but a good way to start. So thank you so much, Jack. Thank you so much, Ciaran. And really, over to you for the conversation.
Thank you, Josh. So, Jack, I just wanted to start by asking you how you kind of first got interested in the arts and yeah, what were your kind of early experiences like in that regard?
I think, like quite a few writers, I came at it through acting. I wanted to be an actor, and did quite a lot at, not at school. At school, my drama teachers didn't really like me, but outside of school, I did quite a lot, and I loved doing it, and found friends there in a way that I didn't find friends in normal life. Drama friends seemed to be better friends, so I became addicted via acting, and then discovered I didn't really have any talent for acting, and decided I was going to direct. But directing plays, you have to pay license fees for the plays, and the license fees at that time, this was 1999, were £65 a night, and I didn't have £65 a night, and so I decided to write a play, and then as soon as I started writing, it was like, oh, this feels good.
Were you someone who'd written bits like from a young age?
Not
Had you always written? Or...
Not really, no, not really. Not like, yeah, that you sort of yeah, you like the idea that you were someone that couldn't stop writing and everything else. But no, I liked watching telly. I watched telly from 4 o'clock in the afternoon till 10 o'clock at night. But I didn't know. What about you? What was your starting point?
So I'd always kind of written like short stories in school, and I really enjoyed English in school. But then when I was about 13, 14, I joined Mass Youth Theatre, which was a local kind of inclusive youth theatre. I kind of started as a performer in the shows. I was in a play by Dab James, which toured. I played a character with CP, and it was the first time I'd seen someone like me represented on stage. And then I thought, I could write things like this. And so I wrote my first play when I was 17 with a friend, and Mass at the Mass put it on. I mean, it wasn't very good because it was the first kind of play that I'd ever written. But having that put on in the Miners Theatre in Alfred in Carmarthenshire gave me a real boost of confidence. And then I decided this is what I want to do. And I went away to uni in Cardiff to study script writing, and yeah, it went from there really.
It's really interesting you say about performers with CP, because I can think of a couple, Francesca Martinez and Robert Softly Gale.
Yeah.
But there aren't many around, are there?
I mean, there's people like Lawrence Clark.
Oh, Lawrence, yes, Lawrence is a good mate of mine. Yeah.
And but yeah, there aren't many. There are a lot of stand-ups from CP,
Yeah,
but I think in terms of actors and writers, actually,
yeah.
there's not many of us in the industry.
But that will change. That will change.
Yes, definitely. And when did you kind of think, this is what I want to do as a career? I want a career in this kind of thing.
I can't remember. Like you, my first play was terrible, but I remember watching it feeling immense pride. So I think I was totally deluded, totally deluded. And
but at that age, it's like the best thing in the world, isn't it?
Yeah.
You created this thing, and it's on the inventory.
And people are doing it. Yeah, people are wasting their time doing it. Yeah, absolutely, and wasting their time watching it. Yeah, and so I think that delusion really took hold quite instantly, and from that moment on, I think it was, oh, this is it, and I didn't stop. I mean, I just wrote play after play after play after play, and found ways to put on play after play after play, and I just fell in love absolutely, totally. It was all consuming.
And was it theatre for you, writing for theatre at that point, or did you start thinking about writing for TV and film?
I think from the moment I started writing, television was in my head just because I love telly so much, and so I particularly wanted to write for EastEnders, that because when I grew up, my mum's from Harrow and Wealdstone and speaks with quite a Cockney accent, and there was something about watching EastEnders with my mum that made me extremely happy. And so the idea of writing EastEnders that my mum would watch, I think, was in my head as being something I really wanted to do.
I think it's like TV for me, even for me, feels like more difficult to break into than theatre. Theatre feels more kind of accessible, more kind of available. I guess what were the challenges for you of starting to write for TV, and did you find those barriers?
I agree with you, first of all, that I think it is that there isn't a clear route into TV in the same way that there is for theatre. You know, that theatre, there does seem to be steps you can walk up. There are things that are out there that if you're looking into it, you should consider, like the BBC Writers' Room do. I think it's a specifically disabled writers group, and then groups like DANK, DTP TV. They're always, you know, I don't know whether you must be, if you know Lawrence, you must be part of DANK in some way. That, you know, that there are schemes, and the need, as you talked about already, the need for disabled storytelling on television is just such a huge thing. And just to have, you know, non-disabled voice, you know, the voices are all non-disabled at the moment. And so to challenge that in any way, so don't be put off TV, is what I'm saying.
I think, you know, from conversations I've had with TV producers, I feel like I'm almost doing two jobs. Like, I'm the writer, but I've also got to talk about the social model of disability and representation, and one of those jobs I'm not being paid for.
No.
Do you feel like that sometimes?
Absolutely, and there is a lot of work being done at the moment by a lot of groups to change that, and there is, you know, we've got the first cohort of accessibility, access coordinators is the term we're using now, but the first cohort of access coordinators are being trained this summer to work on television next year. That, you know, and we've been having a lot of meetings with important people in television that's about trying to challenge that. But I agree with you 100%. It's said 1,000 times. I'm on the DTB TV Facebook group, and you'd be shocked by how many sort of like, so I've been contacted by a TV producer who wants £50 for me to explain to him and the writer what a disabled person is, and at the end of it, they then will do a drama about disability. You know, there's still a lot of that. I don't know whether I can swear on this podcast, but there's a lot of that rubbish around, and yeah, it's all being challenged, but I hear you about the two jobs, and I'm sorry that it's still the case.
I mean, hopefully we're taking steps to change that, and I want to talk about the McTaggart lecture later. But
sorry, your question was about my movement into television, wasn't it?
Yes.
And the truth is, it happened very, very easily. That I had a play on at the Bush Theatre. That took a long time to happen. You know, that there was a lot of sort of, you know, doing new writers' evenings and just trying to persuade people to take me seriously as a writer. But then that play came on, and Jamie Britton and Brian Elsley, who are a father-son combination, came to see it. Well, Jamie came to see it first, and then Brian came along, and they were making a show called Skins, and they said, "Do you want to be in the first writers' room?" And I said yes, and then from then on, I was working in television, and I got to work on, a show that created a lot of noise, and that really, really helped my career. So I got extremely lucky. So yes, it's not an inspirational story. It's just a kind of like, oh, I got lucky story.
And I suppose coming from theatre, which is a writer's medium, a singular authorial voice normally, to being in that writer's room must have been quite a learning curve for you.
Not really. I think there's different sorts of jobs in television. There's the jobs where it's a factory and where the writer's brought in and they are cut up into pieces and told, and now you're a hamburger. But there's other ones where you are really given your voice, and it's not so different from theatre. It's not so that you go into a room, you negotiate what the story is, and that the same happens in theatre, where you're working with a director or a bunch of actors and they go, but what is this, and this doesn't make sense to me, and this doesn't make sense to me. That process is not so different from what happens in TV. There are times when you feel like dog meat in telly, but there are also times when you feel like dog meat in theatre, frankly. And it's films, on the other hand, you're rubbish. But I would say, on my experience of television has been a lot more positive than just we don't care about your voice, just do what you're told, and all those sorts of things.
That's really good to hear. I was wondering whether we could talk a little bit about process. Do you have a set writing process, or does it kind of change depending on what you're working on?
It changes. I don't have the sort of discipline of a process. I get too excited, to be honest with you. I just want to get writing as quickly as possible, and sometimes it just comes out, and it's just kind of like, it just makes sense that you start writing and you're like, oh, okay, this is what it is. And then other times I'm in the middle of a real wrestle at the moment where I'm writing 3 lines of dialogue a day and just staring at the screen. And then I go back to my notebook and go, maybe I should write in my notebook. And I'm just constantly trying to find different ways to keep myself fresh, because if I don't keep myself fresh, I hate myself. So yes, that I wish I had more of a sort of like, well, I do a beat sheet, then I do an outline, then I do a script, but actually I just jump around all over the place, get overexcited, and then go, oh no, this is a disaster.
If you're doing like an adaptation of something, or something based on a historical event, does that change your process? How kind of research based is your process ordinarily, or is that informed by the type of project?
Totally informed by the type of project, and sometimes if you're doing, so I do quite a lot of social realism. I do stuff where I'm representing people. In those situations, you have to talk a lot before you get going, because you have, your job is to do justice to them. And if you don't know them inside out, then how can you do justice to them? So there's a lot of talking as part of that. I just did a show on Channel 4 called Help.
Yeah.
We talked extensively to anyone that we could get our hands on in order to understand the intricacies of what was happening. With adaptation, I sort of think there's 2 sorts of adaptations. There's ones where my voice is important, and there's ones where my voice is unimportant. So to give you 2 examples, I've done Here's Some Materials for television, And with His Dark Materials, my opinion is that His Dark Materials is perfect for television, that it suits television, absolutely. And I have been given the honor of bringing it to screen. And I need to be absolutely rigorous with every choice I make in relation to the book. So everything is about the book. Everything is about thinking about the book, going back to the book. Any choice I make is got to be justifiable in relation to the book. In direct contrast, there's a show, Christmas Carol, that I adapted for the Old Vic. Charles Dickens doesn't need me to do a religious rendering of his text. There has been enough productions of A Christmas Carol that it doesn't matter. That what matters is my version of A Christmas Carol rather than his version of A Christmas Carol. So then it was thinking, okay, what can I do in relation to this? What's my take on this? How can I do this differently from how other people would do this? And so that's a totally different process, if you get what I mean.
Do you still feel that you have a level of creative freedom on a project like His Dark Materials? Do you still feel that you can? I know you're not necessarily putting your voice onto it, but do you still feel? Do you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean, and yes and no is the answer. I have been the one given the job, so therefore, is that my bell going off? I'm sorry. So therefore, I am the one that, I can't do it without me involved. I can't go, and for instance, in His Dark Materials, there's a character called Roger, who is Lyra's best friend, who doesn't actually have that many lines in the book, but I felt a passion towards. And so my passion gets translated into the script. It just does. But also I felt like you couldn't tell the story of series 1 of His Dark Materials without making Roger central, because series 1 of His Dark Materials, spoiler alert, ends with Roger's death. And so I elevated him in the way that the novel hadn't elevated him, because I felt like that was the in the novel, she talks about Roger all the time, but Roger doesn't do much talking. So I was trying to do justice to the book in terms of giving him the same space and importance that Philip did, but equally I was also quite interested in him as a character because I love him. And there's this moment in book 3, Amber, Spyglass, and there was this moment where Lyra turns up, and Lyra's got Will, who's her new best friend, who she's falling in love with her. And when they go to the land of the dead and they find Roger, and there's just this moment where Roger looks at the two of them and just goes, "Oh no, I'm not well," and I just love Roger for that. And so yes, yes, there is some creative juices flowing, but it's not it's not it's my job is to do the books, I think.
Yes. I'm interested in we've talked about breaking into the industry, but in terms of advice for people now, especially after the period we've had with the pandemic, of people starting out, do you have any advice that you would give to writers who are just maybe trying to break into either theatre or TV at the moment?
I think my best advice is the industry is there. The industry is doing its thing. Don't spend all your time worrying about the industry. Spend the time worrying about your writing. Because I'm not promising that talent will out, because I'm not sure it does. I think there is a degree of luck and happenstance and a degree of privilege that wins out in television. But at the same time, if you keep working on your voice, that will, you know, when you get that little window, which hopefully will come available to you if you be aware of the opportunities, but when you get that window, having the best material to take through that window. And I think sometimes writers, because it's so complicated and vast and difficult, sometimes writers concentrate on the getting in more than they concentrate on their voice. And in terms of developing your voice, find your best reader. And your best reader could be, your mate from school. It could be someone you met on a drama course. It could be someone you met anywhere, but someone that will take the time to read your work and just help you develop. And it doesn't have to be someone older, someone more accomplished. For me, it was, I did the Royal Court Young Writers Program, and I met a writer on there called Laura Wade. And Laura Wade now is fabulously successful because she's brilliant. But at the time, we were both just starting out at the same point. And she read everything I did, and I read everything she did, and she made me vastly better. I don't think I improved her one little bit, but I just having those conversations about what I was trying to say with her just made me ready for when I had conversations with other people, and certainly made my work better.
I think there's a lot of people who will say, oh yeah, this is good, which is not what you want to hear as a writer. And you've got to find the people who say, this is okay, but have you thought about?
Exactly. You don't want to be crushed. You don't want someone that just goes and goes, oh, this isn't Arthur Miller. Why are you bothering? You want someone who's an enthusiast and who likes your work. Laura liked my work. That was really useful. But at the same time, you want someone that goes, well, have you considered reworking your Act 3? Because at the moment, all the stuff you're saying makes sense to me, but I don't see it in the text. And that sort of thing is just, and then rewriting it and giving it to them again, and them having the time to read it and go, you got that right, or you got that wrong,
It's building up that relationship so you can trust the other person and you can have detailed conversations, and still you can say, actually, I disagree with you, and that leads to a larger conversation about what the piece is about.
And you will have those conversations when you are then working in the industry. That's your job, to have those conversations. So having training in those conversations is really useful. Training on what you need to defend and what you need to go, oh, you're right. Oh no, I missed it. Thank you. Finding that balance of what a good note is. I think that's such a vital part of a writer's job. What is a good note? What is a bad note? And no one can tell you, because the people giving you the notes will be giving the notes with the same passion. But you've got to know, that will make my work better. That will make my work worse. And I'm going to fight that one and do that one, unless I'm working in film, in which case I'll do both, because that's my job.
It's about picking your battles, I think. And from what you said this morning, it's easier to pick your battle in theatre and TV is in film.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I agree with that. You've got to let them have something.
Yeah.
But then in the next draft, if that doesn't work, you say, well, that was your note. And for this film.
No, you never can.
No.
You've got to love the note. If you take the note on, you've got to love the note, and you've got to be able to, and because they'll forget that they gave you that note. That isn't relevant for the next pass. You do every note because you think it will make it better. And going into the script, going into the note conversations, you can't sit there going, okay, maybe I'll do that one to make you happy. You've got to go, okay, I can see how that will unlock something. And by unlocking something, I will then make the script better, and I can find a way to make your note my note, and that will improve my work.
That's really interesting. Even if you kind of disagree with the fundamental values of the note.
No, if you disagree, then argue it. But if you kind of go, I'm not sure, then then think about it. And if if you're reading a set of notes, and you think 3/4 of them are bad, then you're in the wrong. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
you've got to be in a position where you're going, okay, I can take on the vast majority of these and it will make my work better because I'm working with people I trust and they want to tell a story with the same passion I do. On one of my first shows, a show called The Fades, the exec producer rang me up and said, because I was so panicked all the time, I thought this was my one shot and I can't mess it up. And I walked into every note session like this, like a little, a little hedgehog, all hunched down and just kind of spiky and ready to. And she said, she rang me up and she said, the thing you've got to understand is I love telling stories too. And I want to tell this story. And I love what you're doing. And I have passion to tell this story too. And when I give notes, it's notes given with love. It's not because I'm going, you've got to do this because I demand it because I'm the one with power. It's I'm doing this but to make you better and to make the piece better and so that we fundamentally get the best thing on television possible. And when you walk in with the attitude of just going, I hate you all, I want to stick knives in you, you're hurting me and you're hurting the project. And she said, it's really upsetting being in a meeting with you right now. And I don't like being upset like that. And it was really good advice from her.
I'm going to take that on board. Thank you very much. So I want to talk about the Barbara Matt Allen, which you wrote, which aired earlier this year, which you wrote with Genevieve Barr. What was important to you about telling this story, which is kind of the story of the directions, which were part of the disability rights movement in the late 80s and early 90s?
Well, it was a piece of history that I felt like everyone should know. That it was a history that I vaguely had recollections of slightly, but didn't really know myself. I've been surprised talking to my disabled friends how there was quite a lot who didn't know much about Dan and what Dan did. It was extraordinary, and it's been made invisible, and like a lot of disabled history, it's been made invisible. And so the opportunity to celebrate that and to tell a complicated story about two amazing people was just the chance of my life. Now, as with all disabled projects I've written up to this year, it had to be done via the back door. That it wasn't done through straight drama, it was done through the history department. Right. And so initially we were doing it on a very limited budget. That I've done 3 very disabled led projects. I did this show Cast-Offs, which we did through the disability unit of Channel 4, and we made for 1/6 of the budget of Skins. I like very little money at all. Skins didn't have lots of money. And then I did this show, Don't Take My Baby, that was done through Docs. And then I did this one that was done through history. Now, in the end, we actually ended up with a full budget. That they ponied up the full money because we needed the full money in order to be able to tell it. But at the beginning, it was like, okay, this is what we've got. We're going to use part footage. We're going to use part this, part that. And you and Jen won't be able to take your full fee and everything else. And that was fine because we got to tell the story that we wanted to tell, which was a celebration of Barbara Matt Allen.
Do you think then that shows that there is still a skepticism around disabled-led stories and, whether they are relevant to a mainstream audience, or lack of confidence from broadcasters to amplify disabled voices.
Absolutely. I think it's really changed in the last year or so, and I'm not the only one saying so. That there is a genuine, that there is a door being opened where disabled talent is walking in, but the latest Diamond figures showed that at executive level, disability is represented in terms of 3.6% of television executives are disabled. So, and that's representing 20% of the population. So there is a massive imbalance at the top that will result in unconscious bias. And every time there has been disabled-led storytelling on television, it's actually done quite well. It's actually rated rather well because people are interested, and not just disabled people, but because there is a lack of awareness. I barely knew who Barbara and Alan were. Executive level, none of them would have known who Barbara and Alan were, and none of them would have ever heard of Dan. Maybe the ITV executives that were there when they shut down Telethon, maybe they'd heard of him, but I think most of them have gone. And so that's the change that's got to happen, and it's going to happen over the next 10, 15 years. And it's going to be a hard few 10, 15 years, but at the same time, I think there is a real change going on. I really do. Jen, Lawrence, Annalisa, Danella, that there are writers coming through that are going to be trusted with making TV shows.
But what needs to be put in place to ensure that this happens? Because what I always say is that disabled artists aren't going to just appear from nowhere. You need that network of accessible, production companies raising for disabled artists. There's an infrastructure that isn't there, I feel.
It's getting there. So there's a show coming on television called Ralph and Katie. I always call it Katie and Ralph. It's Ralph and Katie. That's a spin-off of the A Word. That is going to have that has aside from Pete Bowker, who's the creator of the A Word, is an exclusively disabled writing cohort. So all those writers, as with Skins, all those writers now have a television credit, which they then can take on to other companies and go, I've made something, and now I'm going to make more. So that will make a big difference. The BBC Netflix scheme, where they've said that we are going to make disabled work, that means the production companies that were previously skeptical are now going, there is work there, and so therefore we're going to reach out to disabled talent, and we are going to try and understand disabled talent. And it's not ideal, but the fact that they're doing that means that then suddenly people are coming through the door who are different and who have and will then spread those opportunities out. There's another thing going on, that underlying health condition, which is the pressure group that I'm part of with Genevieve Barr and Katie Player and Holly Luberin. Our intent is to, alongside Dank and DTP TV, is to change the landscape a little bit. So one thing, what we're really focusing on is inaccessible workplaces and spaces, of which there is a real array. That if you're a wheelchair user, there is so many places you cannot get into in television, and so we're challenging that. That includes and that will include hopefully accessibility coordinators on all shows, that will include a freelancers fund that's specifically looking to support and augment and in some cases provide stopgaps in terms of access to work and in the mess of access to work and particularly looking at studios and facilities companies. Facilities companies are the people that then if you're shooting in a field in Surrey, facilities companies are the sort of wagons that go to help make that. And when we did our survey, we surveyed all facilities companies and studios. We discovered that there was one accessible toilet in the whole of the country, and so we are, those sorts of things hopefully will change quite rapidly. And there is now another disabled toilet, and it's rather beautiful, that's already been made since then. So and the BBC and Channel 4 and ITV and Netflix and Amazon are putting pressure on these companies now to make those changes. So that's happening. Ralph and Katie, there is now a real. That's what I mean by there's a real movement happening. So it's not as dark as it was.
It all sounds really positive, but not that I'm skeptical. But how do we know that this isn't tokenistic? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
How can we recognize tokenism within the industry rather than a sustained effort towards accurate disability representation?
Who can tell that?
Exactly.
But I believe that we have an opportunity to prove something in this time of getting attention, and I believe that we lean into it and we try and make as much change happen whilst we've got the light on us. And that means, if we can have 20 accessible toilets by the end of the end of year after next, end of 2024, that's huge already. That's huge already. If we can have had 4 shows on TV that were written by disabled creatives, that's huge, and it will prove that there's an audience, and it will prove that there's an appetite for it, and so it may be tokenistic, it may be just this group of people, but if we use this time to prove the importance of disabled telling, it will create ripples that will never end. So when I was starting out, there really wasn't much black-led storytelling, really hardly any at all.
Okay.
And the casts on television were overwhelmingly white. And then came this movement, and it had an instant impact that was possibly tokenistic, and then that went on to being just a lasting impact. That now there are Black television stars, there are Black television writers who could do anything they want. I mean, Michaela Cole can do whatever she wants now. She's possibly the most powerful writer in television, in British television. Whatever her next show is, it will be lauded to the skies and will be supported to the skies, as it should, because she made a piece of television that changed everything. And Papa and Lucian, and do you know what I mean? All these people are now people that are given light, and they're given light because they have an importance rather than because anyone is worrying about tokenism. And so it's created something that's now permanent, and that's what we need to do. And I think it will happen, and that there are Ruth Madeley's on the way to being a superstar in her own right. Do you know what I mean? And we'll be able to get shows made because she's involved. Arthur,
and also narratives that aren't about the fact that she's disabled. I want to see
Absolutely.
Ruth Macy in roles
Absolutely.
where her impairment is not the plot of the thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And same with Genevieve and how Genevieve writes, Rose Ayling-Ellis, Arthur Hughes is about to play Richard III at the RSC. I had a call with the New York Times the other day where I was talking about how much I love Arthur and said, and now Arthur can play Henry V and then he can play
Yes.
Hamlet. And that's the point. That they give a gap in the door, we grab hold of the door and yank it open so that it never stops.
Absolutely, that's what we need to do. And yes, I love your kind of positivity and confidence. And yeah, it's been amazing talking to you this morning.
It's been amazing talking to you. But I mean, my positivity means nothing. It's your positivity that will really matter because you're going to be the one that actually creates. I'm an old bastard. You're the young guy that's going to then make the change lasting.
Can I be cheeky? I know you're really busy. Can I send you something? Maybe.
Of course, yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What a brilliant way to kind of. I'm going to keep you on both on for a couple of seconds, but just I think it was a positive note to end, but actually in a conversation which had kind of a mix of, I suppose, frustrating things and positive things. I mean, I really hear Ciaran's thing about lots of us in the industry who aren't white, straight, cis men having to do two jobs to explain why we deserve a space in an industry to people who frankly don't get the problem sometimes, let alone understand a solution. But some really amazing advice as well from Jack. I love that bit about how people so often it's really easy to focus on concentrating on getting into the industry rather than developing a voice, and clearly developing a voice is super important. Finding your best reader, whoever that is, who doesn't just say, oh, this is good, but actually say, I bet this would be, or have you thought of this? That stuff about disability history being erased and you having to get in through the back door, through this kind of workarounds to get those stories told, which again, I know will be familiar to lots of people, but I guess we feel probably shouldn't be that way in 2022, but I suppose that's the realpolitik. But also, I think, how we met, in a way, maybe it sounds very prosaic, but measuring the number of accessible toilets might be the way we measure whether this is tokenistic or not. Sometimes that is the way we figure this stuff out, isn't it? It's like when that's not a problem, when we don't have to think about it and it's just there and exists, and then you belong and that you can bring your whole self to work. But my favorite thing was that thing around you've got to love the note. What does it unlock? And I know, Ciaran, you've really taken that to heart. And it's I think that's true for all of us in kind of all aspects of our life, because we get notes in all aspects of our life, don't we? How can I be better? How can I be a better person, basically?
I mean, working with Kate already and Claire, Doherty over the last few months on, I've been writing 3 3-minute shorts for GALWAD, and having notes which are longer than the pages I've written, that you just got to embrace that.
Lovely, thank you so much. To finish up, I sort of keep you on for a bit, because I thought it'd be nice when we did these if we'd asked everyone in these conversations the same final question to start to help us draw together some of the themes around how we want the future of creativity to look, because ultimately the story of GALWAD is a story of hope. So I want to ask you both, starting with Ciaran maybe, in 2052, so 30 years from now, how do you hope we'll be telling stories differently?
I hope more people will have the platform to tell their stories, and that we will see a more diverse range of stories on stages and on screens and in whatever mediums that we're using in 2052. And there's more kind of access for emerging storytellers to get their stories out there. I think we are getting there, but I think in the future we will have hopefully we'll have such a diverse range of people telling those stories, and it will enrich everyone's experiences, really. So that's kind of my hope for storytelling in 2052.
Yeah. And Jack?
I will be 73. So I hope that Ciaran will be Jim McGovern, Sally Wainwright, that I'll be sitting down to watch his telly at 9 o'clock. You know, I still think there'll be some notion of the television drama that you watch at 9 o'clock at night. I don't know how it will work then, but and I hope that I'll be sitting down with the Radio Times watching his show.
And the Radio Times in kind of hologram form. Oh, well, that's such a lovely, generous thought to end on. Thank you both so much for everything you've brought to this conversation. It's been a real pleasure to hear about your experiences, your approaches to your work, the worlds you're building. And thank you to everyone who's watching at home. You can catch up on the other Building Worlds conversations on the GALWAD YouTube channel, of course, and also keep an eye on our GALWAD social media channels for details of the story itself coming soon. So for now, though, thank you so much for joining us. Bye for now.